The topics we discuss in this podcast are of a sensitive nature, and my sister and I navigate these topics with a little bit of sarcasm and dark humor. But rest assured, we understand the gravity of these cases and what the victims and their families have been through, and we have the utmost respect for them. Listeners' discretion is advised. What's up, true crime world? Welcome to Luminal on the Wall.
I'm your host, Becky, and joining me, as always, is Bevy, my sister.
So what do you got for me today?
Bev, I have a very interesting story. Classic case of abduction off a bike. It's always the bike. Is it
always the bike?
Is it easy to just give him a nudge?
Yeah, hit you with a car, they go down, swipe them up, right? Half injured, half incapacitated.
Seems to be the case.
Ugh. Anyways, that's gonna be freaking wild.
Yes, but before I get into it, Bev.
Yeah?
Anyone that's listening, follow us on Instagram. See what we're all about.
Yeah, it's Luminal on the Wall.
And go like our page on whatever platform you're listening to.
Yeah, check us out.
Absolutely. All right, Bev, this story is about a young woman named Sierra Jugan. She was born February 11th, 1996. In 2016, Sierra was 20 years old and was in love with her high school sweetheart still. His name was Josh Kulinski. The pair had been together for 7 years, and on July 19th, 2016, Sierra and Josh had been hanging out just like they normally would, Bev. They spent the afternoon together, but around 6:15 p.m., Sierra decided she had to go home. She wanted to ride her bike, so Josh decided to follow alongside her on his motorbike to make sure she gets home safe. Now, when they got to what is called Country Road 6, Sierra said, "Josh, I can do the rest of the ride by myself. I'm close to home." They decided they would chat later that evening, gave each other a kiss, and parted ways. Now, this is where things go awry. Around 10:30 p.m. that night, Josh called Sheila, Sierra's mother. He was calling to see if Sierra was at home because he had been calling and texting her throughout the evening and had no response back from her. Now, after getting that call from Josh, Sheila is like, "Oh, is she home?" So she went and checked to see if her light was on, and it wasn't. Sierra was nowhere to be found. The family started worrying a little bit, but had everyone text and call her to see if she was all right. But every call went straight to voicemail, Bev. At that point, they start worrying about her because it's highly unlike her. She would always let someone know where she was going, if she was going to be home late, or if she was not coming home that night. So they call the police. And even though the police are called, the family decides this time is of the essence. They need to go out and look for her even before the police get there.
Good for them.
Right?
Yeah.
So when the police show up to the family's house, they realize this is super serious. They also need to start a search right away. They also talk to Josh because he was the last person to see them.
Standard protocol.
Yeah. When Josh spoke to the police, he told them exactly what I told you. He escorted Sierra home on his motorbike, and they parted ways on Country Road 6. Josh had also showed the police a Snapchat that he had made from them on the ride home. It showed what bike Sierra was riding, what she was wearing, and the police also noticed that she was wearing a Fitbit. So they had a couple avenues to go searching for. They knew where he last saw her, and they tried to track down the Fitbit if that gave them any information as to where she was.
Yeah, see if it had a GPS signal on it or something, right?
Exactly. Not long into the search, the police actually discover something, and it was only half a mile from Sierra's home. They found her bike, and it was shoved in a couple rows into a cornfield. So it was hidden from the road.
Oh my God.
When examining the bike, they noticed there was blood on the handlebars, and at that scene, the police also find a couple other items. They find Sierra's sunglasses, and they find a second pair of sunglasses that were not hers and no one in her family recognized.
Oh my God, no.
There was also a screwdriver, earbuds that Sierra had, and Josh confirmed that. There was a bunch of fuses and a motorcycle helmet that seemed to have blood on it.
And what?
And we know that Josh escorted her home on his motorbike.
Right.
However, Josh actually still had his helmet, so the police doubted that it was Josh, however, not fully eliminating him as a suspect.
Right. It's just kind of a weird connection at all, right?
Weird
that he
combo of items, too.
Yeah, what is with that screwdriver?
And the fuses.
Yeah.
So even though they found all these items at the scene, there was no actual trace of Sierra, what direction she went, or what happened to her specifically.
Right.
All they could tell is that they were suspecting foul play at this moment.
Yeah, like, it's pretty obvious that she was taken and abducted by some unknown person.
Exactly. So this told the police that they need to spread out to find her. They need to look a little further, broaden their horizons, if you will. So the police realized that, okay, we need to start canvassing the area. Let's talk to the people who are closest by, see if they saw anything suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
So by the next morning, they had started that canvass. And one of the people that the police spoke to is a man named James Worley. He lived on a property less than 2 miles away from the crime scene. The property was 3 acres, and he ran a small engine repair shop from his home on that property. He also lived with his mother and brother, and I'm going to tell you a bit about James Worley because he's actually pretty important to this case down the road. Now, he was born April 8th, 1959 in Tacoma, Washington. He graduated from high school in Metamora, Ohio in 1978. He ended up having a really low grade point average of about 1.59. However, this was attributed to his chronic smoking of weed.
Okay.
He was not unintelligent.
Right.
He
just didn't
smoked
give
the
a
chronic.
shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the age of 14, he smoked a ton of weed. He also started selling it. Now, that kind of lifestyle continued on with James. And then in the year of 2000, he was convicted of cultivating marijuana as well as possessing weapons. Both these charges at the time were felonies, and he ultimately ended up going to jail. He spent 2 years in prison, but was gifted an early release. After he was released from prison, he actually seemed on a bit more straight and narrow path because he opened a small business at his residence, and he ended up being licensed as a trailer transporter. So he had more positive ways of making money at that time in his life. However, while speaking to him, the police ended up taking notice of James because he had scratch marks on his arms that looked rather new.
Oh, God.
He also had bruises all over his legs from what they could see.
Oh, my freaking Lord.
Mm-hmm. And while talking to them, he had told them that his motorbike actually broke down at the exact same spot where Sierra's bike was found. Coincidence?
Oh, I think not.
Absolutely not.
Holy crap.
Now,
That is insane.
I know, right? Like, what are the chances this guy is just offering this information?
Yeah, now we know there's a motorbike connection with him.
Mm-hmm.
Seemingly defensive wounds all over his fucking body.
Mm-hmm.
And a close connection with Sierra in the fact that his motorbike broke down to where they found all her shit. So I'm sure he's probably suspect number 1 at this point.
Yeah, he definitely trumps Josh.
Yeah.
Currently. So
There's that.
now, according to James, once his motorbike broke down, he tried to push his motorbike into the cornfield and hide it so that he could walk home and no one would try and take it or fuck with it, basically. Once he got into the cornfields, he noticed 2 bikes. Not 1, but 2. He decided, I'm going to check them out. He thought it was strange that they were there. However, he ultimately decided he didn't want to leave his motorbike amongst the corn because he thought those bikes were a little sketchy. He told police throughout this little jaunt in the cornfields that he had somehow lost his helmet, screwdriver, sunglasses, and fuses.
What the fuck?
Yes, that is actually what he told them, Bev.
Oh my god.
And like at this point, the police aren't asking like a ton of questions.
He's just offering up this like insanely incriminating evidence and story.
Yeah, making it seem like there's a real logical reason why his stuff is there. But
By a bike of a missing girl.
yeah, and completely unrelated to her.
Yeah, like you were just riding your motorbike along with some fuses in your back pocket and your screwdriver, and somehow you took your motorbike but just left your helmet. Like, what? You didn't want your motorbike to be attached to all this weird shit you saw, but then you left all your other shit? Like, did you not think to just go back and grab it anyways? Like, what?
You're like, I don't even know what this guy was thinking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So the police hear exactly what we are recognizing as well. They're like, okay, like tell us more, James.
Yeah.
So as he continues talking to them, he starts acting a bit more agitated the longer he talks to the police, and he starts getting a little rude and aggressive. It almost seems like he was getting paranoid while talking to the cops.
Well, he did just like give himself
Away.
by everything he said and put himself at the scene of a crime. So it'd be weird if he wasn't paranoid.
Right? And he starts getting paranoid and he asks the police, did you find my fingerprints on a bike or something?
What?
And so keep in mind, the police are only there initially because they're surveying the area, seeing if anyone saw anything. So they're like, wow, this guy's just a plethora of information and it seems intriguing to the case.
Yeah.
So they literally explain just that, like, no, we're just talking to everyone. It's routine because this girl is missing. We're just looking for any information that we can possibly get to help find her. So they're trying to play like kind of friendly, like ease his worries in hopes that he'll just keep, verbal diarrheaing all over them with information.
Right. And does he?
Yeah. But at the same time, he starts getting like really defensive.
Right.
And acting like he's like trying to assure the detectives that he had an alibi. He says, I was home with my elderly mother. I take care of her. And I have multiple witnesses proving that. Just in case you're thinking I had anything to do with this. He also makes a comment and he says, I didn't steal anything or kill anyone.
What the fuck?
Like, who says that?
His guilty conscience is 100% coming through.
I'm with you, Bev. 100%. Now, the one thing I want to also point out is that even though he's saying, I didn't kill anyone, but also keep in mind, the officers don't actually know where Sierra is or what exactly has happened to her.
Right.
They only know that she's missing. So the fact that he's just saying this stuff, they're like, you know something we don't know? Sounds like you do.
100% he does.
Yeah.
So they're like, we're going to keep pressing this guy.
Exactly. I also have to say, Bev, it does sound like he's kind of fishing for information. He doesn't want to incriminate himself despite the fact he already has, largely. He's also just seeing, like, what do you know?
Yeah.
So that I can make my alibi work or make the evidence work in my favor.
100%.
That's also what it comes across as.
Yeah.
Now, within that conversation, James starts asking more of his own questions. And he says, how would anyone even kidnap or take someone on a motorcycle? I don't know, James. How would they?
Yeah, you tell us.
You seem to know more than we do. So following that question, Bev, in another desperate act to try and convince them that he has nothing to do with this case, he offers the police to search his property.
Okay.
Like, you can search it. Go ahead, search it. I'm innocent. Go ahead. I have nothing to hide. That's the vibe he's giving off in the recording of him. Now, the police at that point, they're still trying to get information. They don't know what's happened. They're like, why is he offering this up? They have no warrant. They have no actual evidence for them to go and search his property for, right?
Right.
So they don't want to do it prematurely. Now, Bev, a couple more hours into the police's investigation, they end up back at James's house and property. They've been able to compare notes with the police back at the original scene with her bike.
Yeah.
And when they all realized that James was missing a helmet and there was a helmet with blood on it at the scene, everyone realizes they do need to go back to James's house and they need to find some stuff and they need to talk to him more.
Right.
Now, officers go back. Number one priority, what's with the helmet? They ask him about it. And he's a little weary to answer their questions, but he does confirm that he lost his helmet to his motorbike.
Oh my God.
They proceed to tell him that they found a helmet at the crime scene, and the problem with it is that it is covered in blood. And I shit you not, Bev. James looks at them and says, no.
What?
Like as if he knows. He's just, no. That's not, no. Like that is all he says. And I think he was a little stunned with how blunt they were with their question. He didn't know what to say to that.
Right.
So he just, no, that's not possible. That's all he had.
Yeah, he probably didn't realize there was like blood on it.
Exactly. And I think in a way, with him saying that, he's really trying to be so blunt to really hammer in the fact that he's innocent. And it's like, no, that couldn't be. And if he says it with enough confidence,
maybe the
police will believe
what
this
he
guy
says.
is uninvolved.
Yeah.
You know? Now, at this point, I don't know if he's cocky or really what his game plan is, but he offers for them to search the property again.
And now they have kind of a cause and a reason to.
Exactly.
So they do.
Yeah. When they start looking and he's showing them around, he's kind of guiding them, everything looks status quo until they get to his barn. The first thing the investigators notice is that there is a ton of adult diapers. Some are soiled, some are not. They just straight up ask him, what are these all for? Why do you have them? And something about this question just spins him around and he doesn't really know what to say. He doesn't give a direct answer. He says, oh, they're from the state. I get them whether I need them or not. And goes on and on, just really confusing. Like, okay, one of the officers,
like you could just say it's for my elderly mother.
Thank you, Bev. And even one of the cops is like, are they for your mom?
Like trying to offer him a freaking bone. Like, why are you stuttering on this fucking question, bro?
Yeah, like it was obviously painful for them. Be like, dude, you have an elderly mom. Is she in diapers?
You
like,
have a reasonable explanation, but
so even though that would make sense, he still just keeps skirting around the question. He doesn't even be like, oh yeah, it's for my mom. He's just like, nothing.
Oh my God. It just makes me feel like he has someone locked up somewhere and like offers them up diapers instead of giving them a toilet. Just based on like, you know, the fact that I'm thinking he has abducted a woman at this point. I mean, that's where my mind goes.
Absolutely.
And like the fact that he's so thrown off by this question.
When it's just like a honest, like, oh yeah, I got
what's up with your soiled diapers? You don't have children, guy.
Obviously, they're for your elderly
and they're
mom.
Adult diapers.
I know, like, it's just absurd. So they continue walking around the barn, and like I said, James is guiding them to certain areas, be like, look here, right?
Normal as can be.
Yeah, but he is so clearly avoiding areas. In one of those areas, an officer notices a ton of flies.
Oh.
The investigator literally asks him, did something die here? And as per most of the questions, James is kind of skirting around, being
stuttering,
really vague,
whatever.
And all he says is that that's a woodchuck hole, and then moves on. He doesn't say, oh, a woodchuck died in my barn. Just there's a woodchuck hole, and changes the subject. So they're getting the heebie-jeebies. They know something is not right. So there are multiple officers there at this time. One officer kind of takes James away to look at whatever they're looking at and isolates him from the other two officers. Meanwhile, the other two officers scoot off to see if they can find anything else suspicious.
Yeah, they don't want any more guided searches.
Exactly.
They want to figure shit out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
See if there really was a woodchuck where the woodchuck said there was a woodchuck could be. Just kidding.
Could the woodchuck chuck wood?
In the woodchuck hole where there's
he
flies. Exactly.
So bad. And as they wandered off, what they find, I can assure you, is not just non-used diapers or wood. It is a chest filled with women's lingerie, sex toys, and other various clothing items of women.
Oh my God.
Why keep a chest of women's clothing?
Yeah,
in
and
your
sex
barn.
toys.
In your barn.
In your barn. No kidding.
So all the clothing are actually neatly folded and put in bags. They're all labeled with what they are. So like bathing suit bottoms, lingerie, women's dress, stuff like that. They're very simple, nothing encrypted with the names, just it is what it is. Now, obviously the officers are like, let's ask James about this. Let's see what he's going to say.
Yeah, let's see if he's going to work around this one in a weird fucking way like everything else.
Exactly. And Bev, what he tells the officers is hilarious. Like, what? Are you kidding? That's what you came up with? He says he likes to go on dates and bring them these items as gifts.
What the fuck?
I know. Okay, like, here, take my barn lingerie. Hopefully it fits you.
I was going to say, like, why? Could you imagine if you go on a date with some guy who brings you a dress? I mean, if it was your first date,
weird.
I'd be like, that's fucking weird.
Right? He also had sex toys in that chest, so imagine what else he could bring and how weird that might be on a first date.
Here's a vibrator and a dress. You're welcome.
You can be happy and look nice all at once by your brand new date, James.
My name's James.
Love me.
Love me, please. I'll take you to my barn.
Huh? Intriguing, right?
So creepy.
I know.
Okay, so he's answers weirdly once again.
Yeah, so they're thrown off by that, but they're like, we're taking all the information in. And as James continues to show them around, they want to start narrowing down their questions a bit more to be specific to what they find or what they've already found at the crime scene. So they ask James, is your DNA and fingerprints in the system already? He says, yeah. Yeah,
he was a
He's
prisoner.
actually pretty straightforward. Yeah, because I had marijuana charges back in the day. And they're like, okay, that's good to know. You're already criminal. Because they hadn't looked him up yet. They were just there.
Right, we know that, but they don't at this point. Okay.
So they also decide to mention a bloody handprint that was found on the helmet at the crime scene.
Oh my God.
They ask him if he would take a polygraph test, and immediately he becomes aggravated. And he says, no, I'm not taking that test. They are not accurate. That's too high risk for me. I don't want to be blamed for anything that I didn't do.
I mean, realistically, I get that. They are inaccurate or can be, and they're not allowed in court.
Well, exactly.
So,
I do understand that, but when people are innocent, Bev,
they just go ahead and do the fucking polygraph.
Yeah, they'll say, yeah, at most, maybe let me talk to my lawyer, but yeah, I'll help with anything.
Right.
But he's like, absolutely not. So even though he flat out rejected to do a polygraph test, they asked him in hopes, hey, would you give us a mouth swab and your fingerprints? What do you think he said, Bev?
Probably no.
He said yes.
What
He agrees
the
to it.
Fuck?
Somehow that's logical.
I mean, they already have it in the system anyways, so they're just kind of seeing what he's willing to and not to give, I guess, but kind of weird.
Exactly. So with these questions, the officers are partially just burning time.
Because they're searching?
Because the search warrant is on its way to be served to James.
Oh my God.
They're
so
asking
they can do
these
a thorough...
questions. Yeah. Like they already know they're going to get it whether he wants to or not.
Right.
They're just kind of seeing, let's see him squirm, I guess. So even though James has been rather cooperative in showing around his property and his barn, they know that there is a lot of areas that they're not able to look at because James will not let them.
Right. So this search warrant is exactly what they need to get access to those areas.
Yep. And it is going to open Pandora's box. So just a short while later, investigators show up with this search warrant. He is dumbfounded. And what the investigators find is outrageous. They find a makeshift dungeon that has been built by large hay bales stacked on top of each other to make a room. This room has a mattress in the center of it.
Ew.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Inside that room, that makeshift dungeon, they find restraints attached to the one wall, a bunch of women's underwear, specifically a pink pair with what looks to be blood stains on it.
Oh my God.
They find dried blood, hair strands, duct tape, rope, zip ties, handcuffs, firearms, ammunition, all within that barn.
So this guy's fucked. He's a sadistic fuck.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he is. I'll just be honest. They also find recording devices, video recording devices. There was also a buried, hidden freezer built into the floor of the barn.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was lined with carpet and stained with blood.
Oh my God, Becky.
On top of it, Bev, when that freezer was open, the stench of bleach engulfed the officers. However, there was absolutely no sign of Sierra anywhere. When questioned about this freezer, James told officers he used it to stash his weed and grow it.
Well, that doesn't explain the blood, James.
Exactly. And on top of it, previously he had actually gone out of his way to tell officers that he had no hidden compartments on his property. And on top of that, Bev, the police found it weird that they were in the year 2016 and he would be so secretive about weed and growing it. It's not like we're in the 80s where it's like, you know, it's highly illegal, frowned upon. You know, we're a little more liberal.
And progressive about it.
But you're being investigated for a missing woman and you want to lie about where you potentially store your weed? That's the least of your worries.
No kidding. Like, and that's not even what the officers are looking for. So just like come out and say it. And again, this whole weed explanation doesn't explain the fucking dungeon, doesn't explain the mattress, doesn't explain the blood-soaked underwear or the blood-soaked carpet. Like, it's just stupid. It's ludicrous.
Exactly.
Like, it's just missing so much.
I feel like everything that he's telling the police is very selective and a lie, but to make them not look into it further. But the police
are not dumb. They don't
dumb.
have a fucking GPA of like 1.59 or something,
right?
You know?
They're going to school you every time, James. So on top of the blood-soaked carpet, the stench of bleach in that freezer, a cadaver dog hit on that freezer. So at one point,
there was human remains in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When they asked James, why does your freezer reek of bleach? He told them that about a week prior, he bleached the whole barn. But police seem to think, why would you bleach a barn? It's a barn.
It's a fucking barn.
It's dirty. There's rodents usually somewhere.
It's a fucking barn.
It's a barn. No one would bleach a barn unless you're trying to hide something.
Yeah. And not only that, it's like when they went into the barn didn't smell like bleach. Your freezer fucking did, bro.
Exactly. So while the search warrant is being executed at his property, other investigators are looking at other avenues to help solve this crime. And they find a security camera on a nearby school. They capture James riding to the cornfields on his motorbike. They see about 15 to 20 minutes later a truck heading in that same direction. Now, that truck is identified as James's truck, but the timing of it wouldn't have allowed James to go one way, come back, and then come back in his truck again.
Right.
So they assume someone else has to be driving, and they think it is his brother.
Okay, so they don't think it's him because
the timing. So when they question James about this, he starts straying from his original story, which was his motorbike broke down. He tried to hide it in the cornfields and then walked it home because he didn't feel comfortable leaving it with those bikes.
Right.
Right? That was his original story.
Yes.
But what he's saying now is, no, that was me on my motorbike in the video, and it was me in my truck.
But how, James?
Right? He said he took his motorbike back home and then taken the truck to look for his helmet that he lost and all those other items. Police are like, okay, they call bullshit. They start pressing him because, one, it seems completely implausible that he had enough time to walk his heavy motorbike back home in 15 minutes and then catch him on camera only 15 minutes later searching for his helmet. It's completely implausible to the police. James then changes his story again and says, no, I rode my motorbike home. But if his bike was running, he ultimately wouldn't have had any reason to have stopped in those cornfields. And also, it's this different story than from before.
Yeah, like he said that his motorbike broke down.
And that's why he was there.
Yeah. So if it hadn't broken down, why was his helmet even in the cornfields? And why was all of his shit in the cornfields at all? Like, you wouldn't have even gotten off your fucking bike.
Yeah, you would have driven right past it and never seen those bikes.
And then why the hell did you have to get your truck at all to go look for your helmet if it didn't break down and you never had reason to take off your helmet?
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
None whatsoever. So obviously the police are thinking the exact same thing we are. Doesn't make sense, not plausible. And they call him out. They say, I thought your bike was broken down at that point.
Mm-hmm.
James noticeably becomes flustered and he starts manically laughing. 1, it is so creepy. 2, I've never heard a more sarcastic sounding laugh in my life. And I think he just didn't know what to say, so he just laughed.
Yeah.
At that point, that's all they got from him.
So he stopped talking.
He stopped talking. Now, I'm going to bring another item into question. His computer was searched.
Oh, God.
And they found recent searches looking up hitchhiking, hogtied, gags, and helpless. It was a little later also realized that he had been watching a plethora of porn earlier that day. Like a plethora.
Oh, my God.
I know.
So he was hot and horny and looking for some innocent victim to hog tie and do all these nasty things to.
That's what you could assume from that, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'm speculating, obviously. I haven't found out, but like, damn.
You're putting some things together. So not necessarily that incriminating, but disturbing.
Totally, given the circumstances.
Yeah, on top of that, to add to the disturbing factor, when they looked through his truck, they found more zip ties, pepper spray, a ski mask, 2 pairs of handcuffs, rope, and tape. They also noticed spots of carpet that had been bleached and ripped up. When they confronted James with this, he didn't say a word about the case. He did continue to talk to them on like a more personal level, but nothing about the case. He was silent from that point on. At that point, they had enough. James was arrested for the abduction of Sierra because still at this point, it's the next day. She's still missing.
Yeah.
So that's all they can arrest him for. Obviously, the investigation had to continue because they need to find out what really happened to her. When they tested the mattress in the barn and the pair of pink panties, both tested positive for Sierra's DNA via bloodstains. And then 3 days after Sierra had gone missing, her body was found. Her arms and legs were both hogtied behind her back. She had an object in her mouth that she was gagged with. She was wearing a white lacy top and adult diaper. Now, Bev, that lacy top that Sierra was found in, it matched another item from the barn.
In the chest where they found all the clothing. So the matching undergarments or something were found.
So they were able to connect her to the barn and that crime scene.
And to James.
Exactly.
Great. Sad, but great.
And like you said, we know he had a surplus of diapers. So that's unfortunate. And they were able to make that connection as well. The item in her mouth was a gag, and it matched other BDSM materials that had been found on the property. She also had a laceration on her forehead and a contusion on her leg. One of her teeth were chipped from the gag being shoved in her mouth with so much force. Then the autopsy provided that Sierra had ultimately died of asphyxiation, again due to that large gag in her mouth. There was, shockingly, no signs of sexual assault. So I, myself, when I read that, I actually wondered if she died prematurely according to James's plans.
That is exactly what I thought too. And maybe he's not into necrophilia. So he was like, fuck. And then disposed of her body or something.
Yeah, that's where my mind went, and obviously yours, so maybe it did. Now, Bev, over the entirety of the investigation, officers had started to wonder, how was he so prepared for this abduction?
Yeah.
It clearly was not just done on a whim. He had everything he needed there for what I assume his plan was. And when they looked deeper into his history, they actually learned in 1990, a woman named Robin Gardner had been knocked off her bike by a truck, sent flying into a ditch, and when she got up, she was met with a man holding a screwdriver to her neck, threatening to kill her if she did not get into his car.
Oh my freaking Lord.
You can imagine that man was James.
Of
James
course.
Worley. James ended up handcuffing Robin before he put her into his truck. Fortunately, she found a way somehow to get out of there and run down the street, and was luckily picked up by a passing motorcyclist.
What the fuck is up with all these motorcyclists? Like,
I know.
Holy shit. By the way, just like
Three
a
in one
random
story.
thing. But still, holy crap. Thank God she got away.
Mm-hmm. So after she was picked up, Robin was able to call the police and tell them what she went through, which led the police to find James Worley and arrest his ass. He was found guilty of this assault and was sentenced to 3 to 10 years. However, he only served 2 of those.
So wait, he served 2 years for the marijuana weapons charge, and he also served another 2 years for this attempted abduction?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so conveniently, he did not tell the police about this original charge with Robin.
Because he'd be guilty as fuck. Like, Immediately. Even though he already was with what he did offer up.
Yeah.
That would have like put the nail in the coffin right
exactly.
there.
Sealed the deal. What police recognize is that this is really eerily similar to what they can assume happened to Sierra.
Right. And what they found at the abduction site. Mm-hmm. A screwdriver. Come on. How would that ever connect otherwise?
Exactly. Like, holy shit. His MO did not change.
And he's a serial abductor and potential murderer.
Well, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So after James was arrested for Sierra, he was mandated to talk to a therapist. And what he told them was that he learned how he could be better at abducting women because he learned from every scenario.
So how many times has he done this?
Well, that is a good question because we only know of 2. Now,
right.
Sierra and Robin. How many times has he done this and not been caught or even connected to a case?
Well, exactly. Especially with this whole dungeon and all these soiled diapers. Like and not only that, but then also like the blood-soaked carpet, like in that freezer area. Is that all from Sierra, or is it from multiple victims? Just because she had a laceration on her forehead and on her leg, but like that was it, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm thinking is he's done this multiple times.
I have that feeling too. However, the police have no victims to connect to him or evidence to connect to any victims. So their hands are a little tied, but it does really make you wonder, how many times has he actually done this?
Yeah.
And then gotten away with it.
My gut tells me more than the 2 that we know of.
Exactly. It's believed by people connected to the case and in law enforcement that from 1990 to 2016, that James was responsible for at least 1 more missing woman's case. But there was no evidence. So at least 1 more that they suspect. But it is truly unknown. After James was arrested, he was denied bail. His case was too severe and they said not a chance. Now his trial commenced in 2018, so he sat in jail for a little bit before. And ultimately he was charged with 19 different charges. Some of them included felonious assault, kidnapping, tampering with evidence, aggravated murder, and abuse of a corpse. What the prosecution believed happened was that James had watched a bunch of porn earlier that day leading up to Sierra's attack, and when he encountered her, he struck her in the head with his motorcycle helmet and waited in the cornfield until it was dark. At that time, he called his brother to tell him his motorcycle had broken down. I'm unsure, Bev, if that is just to create an alibi or if it's to ask for his brother's help. Unsure.
Right.
However, the prosecution then believes that James rode his motorbike back to his home, got his vehicle, and went back to get Sierra.
So they think like he's just informing his brother of something that happened, kind of creating an alibi.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or a reason to be at that spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they believe that. And they believed he went home then on his non-broken down motorbike.
Yes.
Got the truck with all of his ties and everything to go pick up Sierra.
And bring her back to the residence. So Bev, once she died, James had taken her to a different cornfield and had buried her 2 feet in the ground. So in the trial, the defense had ultimately wanted a life sentence. They wanted to avoid the death penalty at all costs, so they brought in a criminal psychologist, Dr. John Fabian, who had suggested that the attack was motivated by sexual sadism and connected with a fetish disorder. He had said that James had multiple mental health issues and had diagnosed him with sexual paraphilia disorder, but despite these conditions, James was found guilty on 7 out of the 19 charges. And he was also given the death penalty.
Wow.
This man, very interesting, Bev. While in jail, he wrote a 105-page manifesto detailing how he thinks he is being set up by the police, and apparently the whole thing sounds very arrogant and entitled.
Yeah. I mean, come on, guy. The evidence that they had against him was just obviously...
all the dots got connected.
Yeah, like everything was 100%. Like, there's no gray area. You had her on your property. Your shit was at the abduction site. Like,
her DNA was in the car.
Her body was found in, like, gagged and hogtied, and with the clothing in your barn. Like, bro,
you did it.
You did it.
No one set you up.
Weird. That's annoying.
It is, isn't it? Like, how can you so adamantly deny when it's so clearly that you're guilty?
Yeah.
Bev, his execution is actually in somewhat near future. It is set for May 20th, 2025.
Wow.
Now, Sierra's family feels that if police and the community had been notified of this violent offender, this may have never happened. This led to the creation of the Offender Registry in Ohio, allowing the community to know the potential danger in their neighborhood. And by 2018, a new law was created called Sierra's Law. It was signed and put into effect that year. Now, Sierra's family brought up a civil suit against James Worley. Sheila won and was given the rights to James's property. And she decided to bulldoze the building as a part of her family's healing journey.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. Bulldoze that shit.
That's right. There shall
create
be
something
no
beautiful
one else
on
in
it.
that house. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Bev. That's the story of Sierra Jugan and what her family went through in this terrible event.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for listening.